Welcome back to the channel. Today we have something truly chilling for you. These are three disturbing true horror stories that took place in bars, those seemingly ordinary places where people gather to unwind and socialize. So grab a drink if you dare, sit back and prepare to be terrified. Our first story takes us to a dimly lit tavern nestled in the heart of a bustling city. It's the kind of place with a rich history, where the scent of stale beer and countless stories seep into the very walls. Locals whisper tales of its haunted past, of a tragedy that unfolded within its walls decades ago. They say a man named Jack, a regular at the tavern, met a gruesome end there. No one knows for sure what happened that fateful night, but some say he was caught in a brawl, others whisper of a jealous lover. Whatever the cause, Jack's life was cut short, leaving behind an echo of his presence that refuses to fade. Bartenders tell stories of glasses shattering for no reason, of phantom footsteps echoing through the empty tavern late at night. There are cold spots, they say, pockets of icy air that send shivers down your spine. And then there's the apparition itself, a shadowy figure some claim to have seen lurking in the darkened corners of the bar. It's said to resemble Jack, his face forever frozen in a silent scream. One night, a group of friends decided to test the tavern's haunted reputation. They huddled around a table, sharing stories and laughter, trying to ignore the unsettling feeling that settled upon them. As the night wore on and the drinks flowed, they began to notice strange occurrences. The jukebox, silent all evening, suddenly roared to life, blasting out an old ballad that sent chills down their spines. The temperature in the bar plummeted, their breath forming frosty clouds in the air. One of the friends, a skeptic named Sarah, tried to rationalize the strange happenings. It was just the old building, she told herself, settling deeper into her chair. But as the night wore on, even Sarah couldn't deny the feeling that something was watching them. She felt a cold breath on the back of her neck, a ghostly touch that sent a shiver down her spine. Suddenly, the lights in the tavern flickered and died, plunging the bar into darkness. Screams pierced the air as the friends scrambled to their feet, bumping into each other in the darkness. Then, just as abruptly as it began, the lights flickered back on. The friends stood there, hearts pounding, catching their breath in the sudden silence. But something was different. Sarah, who had been sitting at the head of the table, was gone. Panicked, her friends searched the tavern, but she was nowhere to be found. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. Days turned into weeks, and still there was no sign of Sarah. Sarah's disappearance became another unsolved mystery, another chilling chapter in the haunted history of the tavern. Our next story takes us to a small-town bar, a place where everyone knows your name, and the beer flows as freely as the gossip. It was the kind of place where folks went to escape their troubles, to swap stories, and to find solace in the company of their neighbors. But beneath the veneer of normalcy, a darkness lurked. It arrived in the form of a new patron, a man named Arthur, who quickly became a fixture at the bar. At first, Arthur seemed harmless enough, a little eccentric perhaps, but generally affable. He'd sit at the bar, nursing a single drink for hours, his eyes darting around the room, observing the other patrons with an unsettling intensity. He never seemed to speak unless spoken to, and even then his responses were brief and cryptic, leaving a lingering sense of unease. As the weeks turned into months, Arthur's behavior grew increasingly erratic. He'd mutter to himself, his voice a low, guttural growl that sent chills down the spines of those within earshot. He'd stare at people for uncomfortably long periods, his eyes burning with an unnerving intensity. The regulars, once amused by his eccentricities, began to avoid him, their laughter dying in their throats whenever he was near. One evening, a young waitress named Emily was working a double shift. She was tired, her feet ached, and she was eager to finish her shift and go home. As she made her rounds, collecting glasses and wiping down tables, she noticed Arthur, sitting in his usual spot at the end of the bar. He was staring intently at a young couple sharing a drink, his eyes narrowed, his jaw clenched. Emily tried to ignore him, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. She finished clearing a nearby table and made her way over to Arthur, forcing a smile onto her face. "Can I get you anything else, Arthur?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. Arthur didn't answer. He didn't even seem to notice her. His gaze remained fixed on the couple, a look of pure malice twisting his features. Emily tried again, but Arthur remained unresponsive. Concerned, she decided to alert the bartender. As she turned to leave, she felt a cold hand close around her wrist. She gasped, spinning around to find Arthur staring down at her, his grip like a vice. "Don't you dare!" he hissed, his breath hot and rancid in her face. Terror surged through Emily as she struggled to break free of his grasp, but Arthur held on tight, his eyes burning into hers with a terrifying intensity. "You will regret this," he whispered, his voice cold and menacing. Just then, the bartender noticed the commotion. He rushed over, pulling Arthur off of Emily. "What's going on here?" he demanded, his voice thick with anger. Arthur didn't answer. He simply glared at the bartender, his eyes filled with a chilling rage. Then, without another word, he stormed out of the bar and vanished into the night. Emily, shaken but unharmed, told the bartender about Arthur's strange behavior. The bartender listened intently, a look of concern growing on his face. "That's it," he said, his voice grim. "I've had enough of that creep. He's barred." And so Arthur was banished from the bar. But the unease he had sown lingered long after his departure. The regulars couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible was about to happen. A few days later, the unthinkable occurred. The young couple Arthur had been staring at so intently was found brutally murdered in their home. The entire town was in shock. Chapter 3. The Disappearing Bartender. Our final tale takes us to a bustling college town where the nightlife pulsed with a frenetic energy, drawing people from all around. At the heart of it all was the Twisted Tap, a popular bar known for its cheap drinks and even cheaper thrills. A haven for students. Students flocked to the bar, eager to blow off steam and escape the pressures of academic life, if only for a few hours. Behind the bar, slinging drinks with a weary smile, was David, a friendly bartender known for his quick wit and even quicker pause. David was a creature of habit, always sticking to his routine. He arrived at the bar every day at 5 p.m. sharp, prepped the bar for the evening rush, and clocked out at precisely 2 a.m. His routine was as predictable as the sunrise, which is why it was so strange when he didn't show up for his shift one Friday night. At first, no one thought much of it, assuming he was just running late. Bartenders, like anyone else, were entitled to the occasional sick day, but as the hours ticked by and David still hadn't arrived, a sense of unease began to settle over the bar. His phone went straight to voicemail, and no one had heard from him all day. The bar's owner, a gruff man named Frank, decided to check the security footage from the previous night. He rewound the tape to the moment David clocked out, his heart sinking as he watched him leave the bar and disappear into the night. But something wasn't right. As David stepped out of the bar and onto the crowded street, he seemed to hesitate. He glanced over his shoulder, his eyes darting back and forth as if searching for someone or something. Then, just as he turned to continue walking, he vanished. 1 minute he was there, the next he was gone, swallowed whole by the night. Frank watched the footage again and again, each time hoping for a different outcome. But the result was always the same. David simply disappeared, leaving behind no trace, no explanation. Days turned into weeks, and still there was no sign of David. The police investigated, but they were baffled. David's disappearance became another cold case, another unsolved mystery in a city that had seen far too many. Some whispered that David had simply skipped town, tired of the monotony of his life. Others speculated that he had met with foul play, the victim of a random act of violence. Outro 3 disturbing true bar horror stories. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed these stories, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe for more chilling tales. And remember, sometimes the scariest places are the ones we least expect.